Hi guys, hope you are all doing well. Um, I got a little bit of time today. I've noticed I've gotten a few more subscribers than normal over the past 2 weeks, so I figured I'd make a new vid to welcome the new members. I'm up to 250, which, considering the content, is pretty surprising because literally the content like this will never be suggested to anybody. So the fact that there's even 250 people that found this channel, I find amazing because it's the most shadow banned content that you will find on YouTube. But so I made another list. I'm just gonna go over it as quickly as I can and try and touch on these topics. So the first topic is the world economic boogeyman to distract stupid fucking cattle. So the first thing I want to say here is that the World Economic Forum and all the public-facing information that they put out is purely for cattle consumption. It's only meant to get cattle to react to it. That's the only thing it's meant to do. It has no basis to their actual plans, or in fact, I would say that what they're putting out in the public is probably to pull people away from what their actual plans are. So if you're one of these people who thinks that the World Economic Forum is like gonna take you and your land, you have no idea what you're fucking stupid. Now, I had touched on this. Somebody had asked me if I believed in one of my vids. They asked me if I was a conspiracy theorist and if I believed in the New World Order. And the thing you have to realize about the terms that they feed cattle, they're only there as a cattle distraction. The terms are irrelevant. Just like the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is about 1% of the problem, and your brainwashed cattle-dependent neighbors are the other 99.9% of the problem with society. The World Economic Forum is nothing in comparison to your brainwashed neighbors who live in a fantasy reality. So if you want to blame the World Economic Forum for everything that's going on right now, you're looking for a scapegoat, and it's probably you that's the problem with society and the reason that we're heading down this path of fucking nonsense. I just wanted to play this one vid because I feel like it's very telling of what the actual problem is. And this was the video, the link I gave to the person who asked if I was a conspiracy theorist and believed in the New World Order. And I'm just going to play it right now for you guys.
And that's probably, honestly, one of the things that frustrates me the most is that people don't see that. They're coming after the kids. They come after you when you're young. They're taking advantage of children's weakness. Like anybody, if you say, is it bad to take advantage of children? Almost everybody will be like, yes. But that's all they're doing. They are completely taking advantage of their lack of ability to cognitively process things at a level an adult can. Right. And using it to shape them into the drones that they want them to be. And parents are sitting by and just setting them.
The thing is you need to understand that it's intergenerational organized crime. It's not globalists. It's not elitists. It's not deep state. It's not New World Order. All of those terms are purposefully unhelpful and purposefully undescriptive terms. And so that's number one. The other thing is they're using all of the techniques of an unethically manipulative cult to indoctrinate a hidden religion of statism, the belief in the desirability, the legitimacy, and the necessity of having a government, even though it's not desirable, it's not necessary, and it's not legitimate. So they're slipping it to kids as a religion. Instead of there being a cross or a Star of David, they've got the flag. Instead of there being the holy documents of the Bible and the Quran, they've got the Constitution. Instead of there being a church school, you go to the government church school.
Yeah.
The Capitol building looks like the Vatican for a reason.
Yeah.
They take kids in 4th grade to Washington, D.C., and they take them into the temples along the Potomac, and they show them the deities, and it's always very solemn, and it's very quiet as they're indoctrinating these kids into the cult of statism. They put them in the uniform, the single form, so they take Cub Scouts, and they take JROTC, and they take ROTC, and they take soldiers. They put them in the uniform, the single form conformity. They shave their heads. They move them and segment them off from the rest of society, and it produces, and I don't like, I hate to say this, there's no other way of sugarcoating it, it produces a shave-headed cult member that's willing to goose step when you want him to goose step, and is willing to kill people overseas, and the only reason they get away with it is because they're working on these kids before they're old enough to really understand what they're pledging their allegiance to. They're too young to really understand, is this moral? Is what I'm doing moral? Is this logical? Does this system make sense? Before they're already subscribed to it in a kind of unethically manipulative way.
Now, to me, that is a much better explanation of the problem in society than the World Economic Boogeyman theory. That whole thing is just a complete... The whole World Economic Forum, that's the forward-facing public face and all the information that you're given on it, it's purely a distraction to take stupid fucking cattle's attention away from their brainwashed neighbors, who are the ones who are actually making all this possible, to put it on some boogeyman that's 1,000 miles away that you have no way of ever having any effect of making any change on. So that's what the World Economic Forum is, and so many of these alt media fucking idiots jump on the World Economic Forum as if it's the problem. And it just shows you how desperate people are to take the blame away from themselves and their neighbors and place it on boogeymen, basically. So that's that part. Okay, so the next thing on my list is your fake spoon-fed cattle history and reality are fake. And what I want to say here is that all you have to do to understand that your whole history that you have been taught since a child is pure, no, I shouldn't say all of it, but a good majority of it is a mix between fact and fiction. And for the average person, will never be able to distinguish between the two. And I just want to give you one example of this. If you look at, if you go read the 9/11 Commission, the report on 9/11, that's what's going to go down as the official history of that event. And it is the most absurd, nonsensical explanation for what happened that day. And it's totally false, and it's a complete nonsense what they tried to portray to the population as far as what happened that day. So if they can do that within a 30-year period or a 20-year period, what do you think they can, what kind of manipulation do you think these people can do over a 50 or 300 or 3,000 year period? So when you think you know history, just think of the written history of 9/11 and how many other things you have read about since you were a child that could be just as false and fabricated as that fake history of that day. So just understand that your fake history and reality are fake. And I want to touch on one more thing with this topic. And here, just so you can see, this guy here, Philip Zelikow, he's the myth maker behind 9/11. He's the one who headed the 9/11 Commission. And this guy has written books. He has written books about how to maintain the public myth. So this guy who is in charge of the 9/11, you can read the article. This guy who's in charge of the 9/11 Commission has written books saying how that the population, the cattle, need to be fed a fake version of reality so that they can act in the way that their masters, their cattle ranchers, want them to act. So that's the guy, Philip Zelikow, who was in charge of the 9/11 Commission. He has a book about maintaining the public myth. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So now the next thing I want to talk about here is the Bill of Rights, because this is another area where fake history is seeped into reality for these fantasy living cattle. What people have to understand about the Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights, I agree, the Bill of Rights is the only part of the Constitution that's worth anything. But what people don't understand, and it's just because they're brainwashed. I mean, people can't help it. They want to just listen to what other people have to say, and they don't want to do any sort of investigation for themselves. But what the Bill of Rights actually were concessions, meaning that a very large portion of the founding fathers didn't want any parts of the Bill of Rights. Like, you have people that go around and act like that these founding fathers enacted the Bill of Rights so that they can preserve the freedom for all their future generations. And it's like, people are it's unbelievable how stupid people are. What the Bill of Rights actually are concessions that the founders and the people who constructed the Constitution had to make against their will, in most cases against their will, so that they could get their little federalist wet dream to pass. So basically what the Bill of Rights actually are concessions that the feds had to make. They had to make them, or they weren't going to get their little tyrannical wet dream going. They were concessions that had to be made, or the states and the huge landowners weren't going to go along with it. So don't think for a second that your founders just wrote this Bill of Rights document because they cared about you and your future. Believe me, it wasn't the case. They were concessions that were made, and from the day that the Constitution was signed, those people were working totally against those concessions. And it's just withered away more and more and more and more and more and more until we're at where we're at today, which is a complete fantasy reality of fucking retard cattle. So I just want you to listen to this quote, because this is a Manly P. Hall quote. And I'm going to say up front, I don't agree with everything that Manly P. Hall has ever said, but I do agree with a lot of what he has said. And I think he's made some great insights in different topics. And I just want you to listen to the quote he makes here and understand how people have gotten so far away from reality.
Just as the American Indian, without any assistance from the outside, not only developed a profound mysticism, but evolved from within himself practically every law, rule, and principle necessary to the government of his affairs. The Great League of the Iroquois was probably one of the most important movements of international peace that the world ever knew, and yet it was developed and perfected by Indians sitting under trees wrapped in skins of animals and with feathers in their hair. And yet these people, intuitively and internally, had a tremendous depth of insight. This depth of insight has been lost as the result of the individual being subjected to continual external conditioning. He is taught from childhood not to think for himself, not to search within himself for the answers to his problems, but to read them out of books and have them conferred upon him by physical educational processes. As a result of that, he has lost the power of direct contact with realities. His new philosophy, if you could call it such, is built entirely upon the opinions of his contemporaries and the to interpretations by these contemporaries of earlier documents and beliefs.
So, and I think that what he said there is very, very important for people to understand, because from birth, you have been trained to believe that you're not supposed to figure out any of the complexities of this reality on your own. What you're supposed to do is just listen to what your ranchers have to say, and then they're going to tell you how to interpret what they have to say. And what that creates is brainwashed, order-following cattle. And that is how, I mean, that's basically how the fake history is perpetrated, because from birth, you're taught not to figure out anything on your own. Everything is going to be spoon-fed to you, and just wave your flag and say your little chant to your flag and say God bless America and all the stuff that your cattle ranchers want you to do, and everything will be okay. And that will get us exactly where we are now, which is literally where 95% of the population has no grasp of reality at all. Zero. They're living in a fully created fantasy reality that has been created for them over the past 7, 8, 9 generations. This particular fantasy reality, anyway. So that's all I want to say. That's all I wanted to say about what was that one? Your fake spoon-fed cattle history and reality are fake. So that's that. Okay, so the next topic I want to talk about is a brief history of SARS-CoV-2 by medical misinformation. So now the first thing I want to say here is that everything that I'm telling you right now, I found through Google searches and authoritative sources. So I'm not saying anything here that isn't already okayed by Google. So the first thing that people have to understand about SARS-CoV-2 is that prior to the pandemic, every single year in human history prior to the pandemic, 1/3 of every flu case was actually SARS-CoV. 1/3 of all seasonal illnesses, seasonal cold, were SARS-CoV-2. So just understand that before the pandemic, every single other year in human history, 1/3 of every seasonal cold case was SARS-CoV-2. Now, what else people have to understand is that if you look at the testing for the done this thing right here, you can see here it says it's a rapid test detection for this right here. But if you actually read the fine print and look at the back, you could say this, read it, this product has not been FDA cleared or approved but has been authorized by FDA under an emergency use authorization. This product has been authorized only for the detection of proteins from SARS-CoV-2. Not this right here, not any specific. So they're labeling this as if they're testing for some specific strain of this. But in reality, at no point during the past 3 years was there ever a specific strain being tested for. Please, you stupid fucking cattle, understand this one fact at least. At no point over the past however long it's been are they determining, are they testing for particular strains of this right here. They're testing for the same exact thing that made up 1/3 of all common cold cases since the beginning of humanity. So just please understand that, you stupid fucking cattle who can't do the slightest bit of research. Understand that SARS-CoV-2, which is actually what these tests are inaccurately testing for, has made up 1/3 of every seasonal cold case in human history. long prior than the pandemic. So they want you to believe that they're testing for something specific here. But in reality, they're just testing for the same thing humans been getting since the beginning of humanity. And it's so sad that people aren't willing to do the slightest bit of their own research. They just want to take what these talking heads tell them, swallow it, and continue on with their fantasy reality and live in fear over it. So that's the one thing that I just want people to understand about this right here. This has made up 1/3 of every cold in human history. What they're testing for here. They ain't testing for any specific strain of this. That's just on the packaging. At no point was there ever any strain of this that was tested for. So you should be able to put 1 and 2 together and understand that the pretendemic was just that. But so that's just another way that your history, even in the last 2 years, is a fraudulent history. So just understand that if your last 3 years are a fantasy reality, just imagine what your last 300 years are. Okay, so the next topic is man arrested for panhandling by uniformed armed extortionist. Now, the thing, this right here, this incident really just shows how brainwashed and fully out of touch with reality a very, very large percent of the population is. And until people can, this is very simple to see, but until people can make this connection in their head, there'll never be any sort of change in a positive way, because it just shows that people are so far gone with the actual reality that they're existing in. So I ride my bike a lot, and there's a trail on the river creek near my house, and I ride there quite a bit. And a couple months ago, a panhandler showed up, and he was in the same place every day, or whenever I drove by there anyway. And he would ask for money, and I helped him out a couple times. But he was very polite. He was disabled in a wheelchair, veteran. Not that being a veteran matters in the least bit, but he's a disabled vet, and he was homeless. And he was in a wheelchair on the bike trail asking people for money, and I would help him out pretty much whenever I drove by him. Well, I drive by the one day, and there's a cop harassing him and kidnapping him, basically. And so basically, I mean, literally, you have a disabled man, who is politely, I mean, he was very kind, asking people for any help that they could spare. And he's being kidnapped by a literal costumed armed extortionist. And people don't see any, that doesn't even register with them what's really going on here, like the deeper reality of what's being done. I mean, you literally have somebody who's kidnapping a man who probably gets $20 a week by politely asking for money, is being kidnapped by a man who probably lives in a $500,000 house or more, makes probably almost $100,000 a year from literal armed extortion. Literally, men with guns will come and take your property if you do not pay, so that this armed extortionist can have his life. And I mean, it just goes to show you how twisted the reality is of so much of the population. Like, that we literally, I couldn't even believe it when I said it to the cop when I was driving by. I was like, you're an armed extortionist and you're arresting this guy for politely asking for money? I said, nice. Welcome to America. Because that's my new name for this country, America. Because it's basically even worse than Mexico could ever dream of being. But yeah, so that's a armed extortionist kidnapping man politely asking for money in a public place. So, and I mean, and I just feel like until people can really truly understand the reality of that whole thing, then there's really no hope for any of these brainwashed, stupid fucking cattle. Because, I mean, it's so obvious the tyranny there. And people they're totally oblivious. They turn a blind eye to it, and they just go right along with it. It's truly disgraceful how stupid and lazy and brainwashed these fucking cattle are. I've had it with them. So that's that one. That was what one was that? Let's see. Armed extortionist kidnapping panhandler. Okay, so the next thing on my list is proof cancel culture was started after 9/11. Now, I had mentioned in my last vid, or one of my last vids, that the cancel culture was actually started, the whole psychological operation behind it, about giving these very small minorities like way more privileges than everyone else. And not even so much that, but just focusing on these very small minorities and acting like that they're being persecuted from every direction. So I had mentioned that it started after 9/11, and somebody questioned me on it and said, what's my proof for that? And there's a bunch of, if you can look back in the media pre and post 9/11, you can see it for yourself. But if you really want to see it easily, just watch The Sopranos from prior, because what happened with The Sopranos is that they played for a couple seasons, then they stopped, then 9/11 happened, and then after 9/11 they started the series back up again. And if you watch The Sopranos, the seasons that happened after 9/11 were heavily focused on homosexual issues and other minority type issues as well. But the main one was because before that, the first couple seasons, the first 4 seasons, they were just typical mafia storylines. And then after 9/11, they picked up with the homosexual stuff. And there's other examples in the media that you can watch from that time where you can see the cancel culture coming into play. So I just wanted to mention that because I did have somebody ask me about it. And if you really want to see that why I think it was started after 9/11, just go watch the Sopranos pre and post 9/11, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so the next thing on my list is the Alex Jones Bandy Book charade trial. Now, what people need to understand is that whole trial is a planned, scripted charade. I'm not going to make any assertions on what didn't happen in Bandy Book, but what I'm telling you is that the reason for the Alex Jones charade trial is to ensure that nobody else questions that event. That's the main purpose for it, and I'm going to show you how I know it's a charade. But the one thing you need to understand is that there's people out there that have said, and there's some shills out there as well who have written books and have said things much worse than what Alex the Shill Jones has said about the situation. And notice that they're not in court. And the reason for that is because the whole trial is a charade. There's nothing to even convict him for. He will never, even if he loses, if they pretend that he loses, he will not be losing any of his own money. The whole thing is a staged farce, and it's just used to scare people into keeping their mouth shut and then not questioning that event at all. That's what it's for. And the reason that I know that it's a scripted charade is because I don't know if anybody else has heard of this channel here. This guy, Jake Morphonius from Blackstone Intelligence, this guy he is controlled by intelligence, so his name isn't lying here. This guy's fully a controlled agent for somebody, probably the FBI, I would say. But the way I know that Jones is now, he has come out and said that he is responsible for getting this trial going, and that he was the one who was coordinating with the parents from Bandy Book and this, that, and the other thing to get the trial going. And he's he really plays both sides of the fence. He gave himself away a bunch of times. That's why he doesn't really post on here much anymore. But he was real big when, I don't know if you guys remember this, and here's another reason I'm telling you that Alex Jones is a fully controlled agent. This No More News right here. He used to have another channel called No More News. Now it's No More Religion. I guess he just started this recently. And the guy's name is Adam Green. And his old channel, No More News, was basically just like an anti-Semitic rallying point. He was like the new David Duke, basically. And David Duke's fully controlled as well. But this guy is an intelligence asset. And the reason I know it, because when I saw the content he was putting out on YouTube when he first came out a couple of years ago, as soon as I saw it in the comment section, I said, you remind me of the guy from what's his name? The guy that died from the Fast and the Furious. I can't remember his name right now. Something Walker. But I was like, yeah, you're an FBI agent and all, just like he is. And the comment got deleted. And I must have called him out in 3 different accounts, and they got, as soon as I called them an FBI agent, they got deleted immediately. So if you're that scared of a little bit of scrutiny, then I'm gonna say that I was hitting pretty close to the nail there. And I mean, I just look at the guests he's got: Jordan Peterson, Owen Benjamin, all controlled fucking fuckwads. But the reason I know that, I'm going back to the Alex Jones thing, and how I know that Jake Morphonius and this guy and Jones are all part of the same intelligence scheme agency, is because now this guy claimed he was a huge anti-Semite. That's what his whole shtick was on YouTube, right? All he did was bash the Jews, this, that, and the other thing. And usually those type of channels, it's a dead giveaway that they're intelligence-controlled channels. And the other thing I found a bit odd is that even though he was this radical channel that really shouldn't have been even allowed on YouTube, he was still being given interviews, like with people on Alex Jones, like he was calling into the Alex Jones show, and they were giving him airtime and like catering to this guy, right? So I kind of thought that was a little bit interesting too, because, well, so it turns out this other guy, Jake Morphonius here, takes a trip to Israel, and he made a vid, right? And on the vid, he's like, yeah, me and Adam Green just landed in Israel, and Adam Green he showed up in the background, and they're like high-fiving and being buddies with each other. And so then people started, as soon as people saw it, they were like, what the hell is Adam Green in Israel for? He's supposed to be the biggest anti-Semite on YouTube. And what are you in Israel for? And who's paying for this? And within seconds, the video of him and Adam Green were taken down, and it was completely washed from both channels. And you never heard either one of them talk about it again. But what I'm getting at is that this guy here is the one who's claiming that he's the one who got the Alex Jones trial ball rolling, and him and his intelligence buddy Adam Green here and Alex Jones are all tools for the same exact intelligence agency. So just understand one thing about the Alex Jones charade trial is that it's totally scripted from before the first court hearing. All you have to do is just watch the original deposition. and you can tell that it's a charade being played out, and it's for mass consumption. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Anybody who thinks that like Alex Jones is in some sort of like real trouble over this, you're fucking stupid. So that just understand that this guy here, Adam Green here, and Alex Jones, they're all agents of some sort. They're all working for some intelligence agency, and it's the same one. So just keep that in mind if you ever run into any of these fucking scumbags on the internet or in real life. Okay, the next one on the list is government employees equal high-class welfare cases. And I got two stories that are actually close to home that deal with this topic. And I've actually seen, I have family members that work for the government, and I've seen them do very similar things to this. And it's basically why I don't talk to them anymore. I'm just going to say, these government employees, they have no qualms with wasting your tax cattle money on their own benefit. They don't care how much it is. They will take and take and take and take and take and take some more of the tax cattle money while thinking that they're like doing some necessary, something necessary for society. They're totally, I mean, it's really messed up. So the first story is, my property backs up to government, Pennsylvania state owned property. So the people that work on this property, they're there Saturday and Sunday for no fucking reason. There's nothing happening there. There's no reason that they need to be there for overtime, but they manage to get overtime and I don't ever see them doing anything. I mean, the buildings, that government building is closed on Saturday and Sunday, so I'm not sure why they need to be there getting overtime. But if that wasn't bad enough, the same guy that gets this unnecessary overtime, my neighbor at the end of the block, he's another government employee, but he doesn't work at that building, but he lives about 3 houses down from me. His tree fell, right? And when we had a bad storm one day, his tree fell down. And so it sat there for like almost a month, and I thought that was kind of odd to begin with. And then one day I looked down there because our yard, I can see that where it fell from my yard, and I see the extortionist welfare case that works at the government building that backs up to my house. He's in this guy's yard on the clock during work hours on a Monday, cutting this guy's tree up. Like, there's no end to the tyranny these people are willing to just push on anybody that isn't a government employee. I know I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again and again and again. The pigs, the government employees, and the politicians are the enemy of freedom, period. These people will go along with any amount of tyranny that they need to in order to keep that extortion money, paying for their food and paying for their property and paying for all their other expenses that they got. This guy's literally, he's working, he's getting paid from the state for being at his job that he has, and while he's getting paid from the state, he's down at my neighbor 3 houses down, cutting up his tree for some extra cash on the side. And if that wasn't bad enough, then it went on for like 3 or 4 days where he foisted all the logs up over the fence and onto the government property. So basically, he took this guy's tree that fell down in his yard, cut it up in work during his government work hours, put it on government property, and then came with his truck and a trailer and took it home with him so that he could have it. This is the type of shit that these welfare government employee scumbags are willing to do. I mean, and I've seen it with my family as well. I got family who works at a government sewer plant, and they just use the trash cans. It's like their own, like they do construction at their house. They just throw it away in the government trash can. Like, don't you wish we all had that privilege? Oh, man, it's truly unbelievable. That's why I have no respect at all. Like, if there's a group of people that I have zero respect for, I have more respect for the poorest welfare recipient than I do for any single government employee on any level, anywhere. It's truly disgraceful. And just one more story to go along with this. I also live pretty close to, not real close, but pretty close to what used to be known as Greatersford Prison, which is Pennsylvania. It used to be run by the state of Pennsylvania. Now it's called Phoenix Correctional Facility or something like that, because now the taxpayers get extorted for it, but then they give that money to a private corporation so that they can make billions of dollars off the incarceration and caging of humans. So I'm sitting out back the other day and I'm seeing all these helicopters flying around. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, wow, do we have a prison break? Am I finally going to get to see a prison break? Because I've been here for over 10 years and there hasn't been any issues with the prison. It's not real close, but I mean, it's pretty close. But I haven't had any issues, nothing to do with the prison. So I'm seeing all these helicopters, right? And they're flying by and they're flying by. And I'm like, oh, there must be something going on with the prison. Well, there was something going on with the prison, all right. And what that is that the Pennsylvania FBI and the Phoenix Corporation were holding exercises at the prison. And they always do this shit. They have a shooting range, and I can hear the gunfire going off. It goes off like 24 hours a day. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of money these government welfare leeches are willing to waste and like think that they're like some fucking necessary part of society. It's truly disgraceful. These people, I just can't stand them. I really can't. So what actually happened is that the Phoenix Corporation allowed the Pennsylvania FBI to hold an exercise there. And during the exercise, it wasn't no sort of prison break or anything like you would think. What actually happened was the FBI blew themselves up. So 2 FBI agents blew themselves up and had to be medevaced out of there. And it's just truly unbelievable. So the tax cattle are getting extorted, right? Listen, this is the extent of it. The tax cattle are getting extorted, and this is on the weekend too, so that these FBI agents can be doing their little overtime exercises at the private prison that we're getting extorted to pay for, right? And then during their little exercise, they blow themselves up. So now, not only are we going to pay for their exercises, but we're going to pay for all their medical bills and probably their salaries for the rest of their lives, because you know that's how it works with these fucking scum of the earth leeches, is that once they get hurt, they'll be on disability for the next forever, basically, and they'll call themselves heroes for blowing themselves up. They'll be the heroes that blew themselves up at Phoenix Prison. Truly fucking disgraceful. And this is why I hate all government employees. I'm gonna stop now on that topic because I just get too angry when I talk about it. So I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about are the frauditors. And I have a couple more, but I'm going to cut it off here because I feel like it's going to run too long. I could probably go on. I started drinking some wine about after the last section, so I could feel like this could go on for a while, so I'm just going to cut it short. But the next part I want to talk about are the frauditors, the First Amendment auditors, supposedly. And the topic, what I named it in my list, is the frauditors ain't on my side. And the first thing I want to say is that a good portion of the auditors are controlled. They're controlled opposition. And I'm just going to show you one example of controlled opposition and why I know they're controlled opposition, but there's many more that are like this. This guy here, Auditing America, and in case any of you don't know what First Amendment auditors are, they're these people that go and record, well, they're supposed to be recording public employees, government workers, and stuff like that, but now it's turned into more than that, where they just record anybody on the street and piss them off and cause a big scene. But, and I'm not saying I don't think they should have the freedom to do that. I do think they should, but the one thing I want to say is you have to be very careful because a lot of these people are controlled. And I just want to give one example of somebody that has a lot of subscribers that is totally 100% controlled asset, and it's this Auditing America. And if I hate pigs more than anything, so I had subscribed to a lot of these people because I like seeing pigs made look stupid. But what I realized over time is that me and the people that are recording these videos have next to nothing in common. And I mean, that's the sad reality of it. And I mean, and besides that, a lot of them are fully controlled part of the show. Now, this guy Auditing America, he's got 250,000 subscribers almost, and he had almost turned to nothing. About 2 or 3 years ago, he got arrested, and he was facing jail time. And he was crybabying on his channel about he don't know what he's going to do, and this, that, and the other thing. And he didn't know what he was going to do. He was up in wit's end. And all of a sudden, that whole line stopped. And within 1 week from him making his crybaby thing from getting arrested, he teamed up with this guy here, Fake Mike Real News, who is a fully, he's the intelligence, he works directly for an intelligence agency. And he's used to coordinate more than one of these guys who've probably got arrested and then got sucked into being a shill. But, and the way I know that this guy's a total sham is that he got arrested 1 week and he was saying how he was going to stop doing this until he got his court cases straightened out and this, that, and the other thing. And then all of a sudden, that whole line disappeared. And then in one video, he introduced this guy. And they had this real awkward interaction like they had never even interacted before. And now this guy and him were like partners. And what you have to understand is both of these guys here, this guy here is the true asset, and he's being used to like coordinate multiple other assets. But that's how I know that a lot of these people are fully controlled, because this guy here, Auditing America, went from almost doing jail time to never mentioning that again, and then introducing this guy. And then they both traveled around the country. And see, that's the other giveaway, is that these guys, the AstroTurf, the really easy to spot AstroTurf, they like, this guy has no views, nothing. But yet he travels the whole country constantly, showing up at every single one of these organized protests. And he's part of the whole AstroTurf scheme. This guy here, right here. This guy, he's a fully controlled asset, and he's coordinating multiple different other of these guys, like Auditing America here, who got hemmed up in some way, and now they're doing similar type work. So now they travel around the country, and the way you can tell is because they show up. There's like all these organized type protests, the ones that are organized by political action committees and stuff like that, or like minority, like people that represent these minority groups. They show up to every single one. And this guy here don't get no views, and he's the main one. So where is he getting the funding from? And the other way you can tell is by the people that he has on his channel that gets 0 views. Let's see. There was a couple dead giveaways here. I'm trying to find them. You gotta look through his vids. If you look through his vids, you'll see some dead giveaways. Like there's Titus Frost was one. He's an asset. He's been outed many times over the past 10 years. Santos Bonacci, he's another one that he interviews that's been outed multiple times as being a shill scumbag. And like he don't got no views. So how's he coordinating all these other guys auditing America who actually does have some content and does get some views? But this guy here is the one who's like coordinating everything. So just understand that a lot of these auditors, and this isn't the point of what I'm saying, but just understand a lot of these auditors are fully part of the AstroTurf charade that is the American discourse at this point. And this guy here is at the number one part of the list. And it's funny because I've seen Low Impact Shill promote this shill too. And Low Impact Shill is fully part of the charade too. They all have intelligence up their ass and feeding them the topics they're supposed to talk about. It's truly disgraceful, the state of social media and the end of the whole country really at this point. But that's only the one aspect. The other aspect I want to talk about as far as the frauditors, because there's a lot of them that aren't controlled by intelligence, but they don't hold any of the values that I have. Like, they ain't on my side. They don't have none of my beliefs. And, like, these people want to just go around recording the police and anybody out in public. And I'm fine. I definitely think they should be allowed to do that. But at the same time, that issue, and they are allowed to do that. Like, you don't see them getting arrested. You'll see them getting arrested. But for the large majority, these people go around unimpeded, and they record the police and they record the government employees without any issues at all. And while I think they should be allowed to do that, to me, that's like you're completely avoiding the elephant in the room. That they're harping on this one issue that they're actually being allowed to do without any problems really, while they completely ignore the 10,000, 20,000 tyrannical statutes and laws that are in place that don't have nothing to do with recording the police. And see, this is where all these frauditors are a complete sham. And like, there doesn't need to be an industry of people who record the police and are allowed to do so. I mean, while I think they should be allowed to do so, I don't think we need an industry of people feeding themselves that way. And see, the problem I have with them is that they don't have any single problem. They wave the flag and they think we need the police, but they think that they should just be allowed to record the police and make a living doing it. And fuck you. That's what I got to say to that. I don't have a problem. Like, I think you should be allowed to do it, but that's about 1,000 issues down on my list of problems with society. And see, the issue is the 1,000 problems that I have with society that come above that, these clowns, like Honor Your Oath, this guy here, he's been around for a while. These people, and this guy very well may be a military shill of some sort, but it's the same thing. Like, they want to pretend like that their ability to record in public is like the only issue that needs to be addressed in society. And to me, it's about 1,000 things down on the list. So, like, it's a giant distraction in a way if these people are never going to focus on the real issues of society. And they're going to completely ignore the 20,000, 50,000 statutes and laws that are on the book that actually get enforced and put people in jail and extort them every single year. They want to completely ignore all that stuff. but then just focus on the very small problem that isn't even really, they're not even being attacked for it, very minimally, of recording public officials. And like I said, I do believe that we should be allowed to record public officials, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a very minuscule problem of the problem. And there's about 1,000 other things that need to be dealt with that are much more pressing than these people making a living recording the police. Like, it's more people try, like, it's just the same thing. Whenever anybody finds that they can make a living out of doing something, they're going to gravitate towards it, and they're going to neglect any other reality that gets in between them and them making money so that they can pay for their survival necessities. And I mean, it's just, and this guy here, the reason I don't trust this guy here is, number one, he's ex-military. Number two, he wore a mask in Florida for a large part of the time when nobody in Florida was playing the game. And number three, he focuses on all, like, recording in public. Rarely does he ever have any trouble doing what he's doing. Like, nobody really, I mean, people give him a hard time, but he don't ever get arrested. They know who he is. He doesn't have any issues. But the reason I have an issue with this guy here is because I've had comments, like, he made a video about panhandling, and he pinned his comment, right? So I made a comment on his comment that said, oh yeah, only in America, panhandler, man asking for money politely arrested by armed extortionist. So it just shows that, so what he did when I spoke a little bit of truth on his video, he unpinned his own comment so that people wouldn't read my comment. So that leads me to believe that this guy is just he's a government welfare, and he's ex-military, number one, which already makes me suspect of him. And number two is that he doesn't actually want people to understand the true reality of what's going on. Because as soon as I commented on his video with some true reality and calling the situation for what it was, he totally made sure that all of the viewers of his video would not be able to see the true reality of the situation that he was personally reporting on. Because he was reporting on the fact that panhandling's not a crime, it's allowed by the Constitution, it's just free speech in public. But as soon as I made a comment that made government look like the armed extortionists that they are, he totally didn't want nobody to see it, and he's done it more than one time. So that tells me that he is part of the charade. If he doesn't want people to truly understand the reality of why armed extortionists shouldn't be kidnapping panhandlers. Like basically he's the one who was trying to make a video defending panhandlers, but then when I actually brought the true reality to it, he didn't want none of his viewers to see it. So that's why he's on the left, and he's ex-military, and he wore a mask for months longer than anybody else in Florida. That's why I think this guy he's part of the charade. He's a military shill. And he also he does these things where he goes around holding signs saying God bless the homeless veterans, but that's just more bullshit. So why is it just the homeless veterans? Why isn't it just the homeless period? As if the veterans have some other, or they're actually fucking more stupid than the population, the veterans. So I don't know why he's holding them in a higher regard than the rest of the population. It just goes to show that this guy's part of the show, and he don't really want his people to understand the true reality that they're existing in. He went out of his way to censor me so that people didn't understand that armed extortionists are arresting people politely asking for money. So just beware of anybody that's out there recording and pretending that they care about freedom, because 99 times out of 100, they could give two shits about freedom. As you can tell by him wearing masks, this guy wore a mask. If you go back, you can see he wore a mask way longer than most of the population, and so do most of the frauditors. So I'm going to end it here because I don't have much. I don't want to go too much longer than this. I'm probably going on an hour already, but I know this one was a bit more harsh than my last ones. Hopefully it doesn't get censored. I'll make it available for a way for people to watch it, even if it does get censored. But alrighty, guys, take care. I'll talk to you soon.